The position of our Prime Minister, ever since that Chequers summit, when she stunned her own cabinet by putting on the table a proposal, not the one drafted by Brexit Secretary David Davis, but the one drafted by the Civil Service, and she's still today defending Chequers. She's still saying that it's the only credible plan. She's still saying it's the only way to keep the United Kingdom united and together. And yet, it's been rejected in Brussels. It's been rejected by Boris, who resigned, by David Davis, who resigned, and other junior ministers who resigned too. And in the country, it just doesn't have any support. It hovers around about 10% of people think Chequers is the right way forward. So it looks like a very, very doomed plan. What does a Prime Minister do who has committed herself to that course of action? Well, one possible approach is she sticks with it and perhaps brings down the entire Brexit process, perhaps cannot get it through the House of Commons, we finish up with a general election, maybe a Corbyn government, I don't know. Or is it a sign of strength or weakness that sometimes a leader changes their mind? Because my contention is, if she chucks Chequers and says, OK, we've had enough of all of this, we've had enough of being given the runaround by these increasingly arrogant, rude, vile bureaucrats in Brussels, we are now going to pursue a Canada Plus type deal. We're going to go for free trade. The very thing that actually the people of this country thought they were signing up to 45 years ago. We're going to go for a free trade deal. We know the voices of German industry and French industry are now speaking out strongly in favour of this proposal. We know there's a track record going back for years, because we've asked Nigel, he's been there for 20 years, and we know that actually this option has always been there on the table. And we're going to go for that. On Northern Ireland, hey, if we have free trade, there'll be no tariff. Ireland actually is not part of the Schengen zone, so we don't see a great risk of people smuggling going on. And there really is no great problem and absolutely no need for a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. And we're going to take this one last big generous offer to the European Union, and we're going to tell them, make your mind up, or we're leaving on WTO rules. What are the advantages of doing that? Number one, it delivers the Brexit people voted for. Number two, people keep asking, how are the Tories going to reach out to Labour voters? Well, I tell you how, there's 5 million of them that voted for Brexit. And a British Prime Minister saying, we're going to do the patriotic thing, we're going to become independent, and we're going to get tough on immigration and reduce the numbers coming into Britain. If that was all done, I think she'd do incredibly well with Labour voters. Yes, there are many other issues out there. Housing, people are worried about. Health, people are worried. I understand that completely. But, you know, for many of those 5 million Labour voters, they want Brexit delivered. They're not getting a clear signal from the Tories, and least of all, one for their own party. I think she would unite the country around her. I think that strategy would command majority support in the nation. So what are the problems? Why won't she do it? Well, one, of course, there is her own personal political views. She still clearly very much remain. Secondly, the party, well, overnight, another one, Dominic Grieve, former Attorney General, now coming out for a second referendum, which they try to brand as the people's vote, but it's not. It's a second referendum. So she would face considerable opposition, maybe a dozen, maybe 50, maybe 20 MPs in her own party would not support this position. But I think the country would. And if a proposal like this was voted down by the House of Commons, then an emergency general election would see her win it comfortably. That is my view. I'm not saying that she will do it. I think she should do it. I think chucking Chequers and going for a Canada deal would make her a stronger leader. Tell me what you think. Tell me I'm right on 0345 6060 973. Tell me I'm wrong by texting to 84850, by tweeting to Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can comment on Facebook too and watch us there as well. Phil is calling from Cobham. Good morning, Phil.
Morning, Nigel. Well, I'm going to tell you you're wrong.
Right, go on.
You've never bought in, and Brexit has never bought into what the whole European Union is all about, and that's the issue here. I mean, for starts, you used those adjectives: arrogant, rude, and vile of
Yes.
Brussels bureaucrats. Well, quite frankly, Nigel, you could use that. Labour Party members would use those adjectives of Conservative Party members, and vice versa, and of bureaucrats within Britain as well. This is the big joke, and this is the irony, Nigel, of your thinking. You actually would get on better as a party, of UKIP, with your so-called allies in Europe, who, by definition, you can't actually get on with, because, if you're a far right side of the UK, you talk the same language as the far right side of Germany, if you like, but ultimately you cannot get on because one is totally for Germany and one is totally
No, Phil. You completely misunderstand this, don't you? The fact.
No, I don't.
Oh no, Phil, you completely misunderstand it. If you live in a street, right, your first priority will be to your family, right? But that doesn't mean you can't work with your next-door neighbours. That doesn't mean you can't be on the committee of the local residents' association.
That
doesn't mean...
Analogy. And in many respects...
Well, of course it is.
You're absolutely right. That shows how weak your logic is, because your neighbour could be starving, but, oh, no, I only look after my family. So you look after your family.
So your logic, Phil, is... Phil, that you go joint account at the local bank with the neighbours, do you?
The whole point, Nigel, is you're trying to build in a world with such, division. If you cannot see how similar, really, the cultural ties of Europe are, and how important it is for us to stay together.
No, I can't. Phil, I have Phil, I can't, because we have common law. They have a different legal system entirely. We have our links and associations through language and history around the world in a way that no other European country does. I'm not saying, Phil, we can't be friends with our European neighbours, but we're not the same, are we?
Say one thing, you go on about the bullies of Europe.
Yeah.
The bullies, I hear this
thugs, gangsters. Yeah.
Right, now you keep on going about your businessman, Nigel. You keep on going on about your businessman. Tell me, Nigel, you're a small business, you do business with a big business. Whose terms do you do that business on? Do you do it on your terms, or you do it on the big business's terms? Now, don't lie to me, Nigel.
Well, either way. If you can't find a big business, if you find a big business that wants to, if a big business wants to bully you down, you tell them to go to hell and you find other business.
Every business out there will know what I'm talking about. I've been in that position. You don't have the power, because they want your business for sure, but they don't need it. That's the difference. And you're going on about your, Britain's right to drive through now in the world. All these countries are developing, Nigel. Go back 100 years, you had Britain, you had America, you had a few other major drivers, but very, very few. Therefore, we could rule the roost, as you say, with this Anglo-Saxon alliance.
I'm not asking us to rule the roost, Phil.
Nigel.
I'm not asking us to dominate them. I'm asking it to have a partnership of equals. And there's absolutely no reason.
The point is, you're not going to be equals, Nigel.
Phil, can you not see this European Union model is not only undemocratic, anti-democratic, but that it's actually falling to pieces? It doesn't work.
Well, let's take the democratic issue. You, in this country, UKIP in 2015 polled over 4 million votes and couldn't actually get one actual MP that was voted through the election, truly. Now, you tell me how democratic that is, and that's our system. I'm fed up with hearing how brilliant our system is. I've lived and worked in 3 different European countries. And believe you me, Nigel, they all work very well, and you meet the same person in those countries very well. If you were born in Germany, you'd be doing exactly the same job you are now.
But Phil, hang on. Isn't the point here that the people with the sole right to propose European law are a bunch of unelected old men in Brussels? There's something wrong with that, isn't there?
Look, they have to swear allegiance to the European ideal.
To the Union.
They aren't acting for their own countries, for their own priorities. That's what the whole point of this is.
Yeah.
And as I said, if you Brexiteers can't see what is coming...
No, we can't. We can't. So should Mrs May stick... So what you're really saying is you want Mrs May to reverse Chequers and put us back into the EU. Is that what you're saying?
I totally do. Absolutely.
All right. Well, she could do it, Phil. She could do it, but it would be electoral suicide. Phil, you represent about 20% of voters in this country. About 20% don't want to leave. I tell you what, it's a figure that is actually going down, not up. Charlie is calling from Cardiff in South Wales. Charlie, what should she do in this dilemma? I mean, she's got a real dilemma here, hasn't she?
Yeah, good morning, Nigel.
Good morning to you.
I think I'm coming round to the view that we should chuck Chequers. But a quick comment on your calling the European Union... Sorry.
Yes, right.
I got Theresa May's problem with the vote. Calling the EU undemocratic when we use first-past-the-post system, which you recognise is so totally undemocratic.
No. Charlie, we could reform our own system. The point about the European system is they want to make sure the voter can never actually interfere too much.
Yeah, I mean, I felt sort of at the referendum having a choice between two unacceptables. I didn't like the way Europe is run. I don't like the way Britain is run. And I had to choose between the lesser of two undesirables.
No. So Charlie, you're coming to the view that she chucks Chequers. What politically then should she do?
Right.
And
Well,
she's got until
I
Wednesday
think,
to make her mind up.
Sorry, right. As a Remainer, I think a soft Brexit like Chequers would be better for the country financially. But I can see a problem with it, and it's this. If we come out with a soft Brexit, and things go wrong, nobody will take blame for it. The Remainers will say, well, that's your fault to the Leavers for taking us out. The Leavers will say, no, it's your fault, you softened it, we didn't have a proper Brexit. So I think, and although I can't see it actually happening, is that May should go back to the country for clarification. At the last referendum, there was talk about you don't need to worry, it's not going to be too bad. You can come out with a Norway option, or we could have a Canada option, or a Switzerland option. It was muddled. I think she should go back to the country and just say, right, it's a straight choice between come out without a deal, as a proper Brexit as the Brexiters want, or stay in. If we go for come out, and I can see no harm in having a referendum if only 20% want to stay in, it would clear the air, but the most important thing I think is it would end this disunited kingdom that we have, because at the moment you've got half the people
Charlie,
one way, half the other.
I promise you one thing. If we vote to leave again by a much bigger margin, the globalists will never stop in their effort to get us to rejoin. Charlie, thank you very much indeed. And Charlie there, going very much for a second referendum. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's now 10:16. It's the Tory Party conference here in Birmingham. From what I've seen of it so far, it is disarray, disorganisation, chaos, and a big security lapse. It's hardly good after the shambles that last year was. And joining me here is Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Theo, good morning.
Very good morning to you, Nigel.
Not exactly off to a sort of a start with a spring in their step, are they?
No, we've already had a similar moment to what happened last year when the lettering fell off the stage behind Theresa May with that security breach. The Conservative Party app publishing the details, or for public view, I should say, the details of cabinet ministers, their phone numbers, their email addresses. That was spotted and dealt with, but that reflected badly on the party chairman, Brandon Lewis. Members already very unhappy with the way the Tory party are going into this conference. Lots of talk this morning about Boris Johnson's interview in the Sunday Times and his idea for a bridge to Ireland. Not all of most of the comments have been pretty derogatory about the former Foreign Secretary's idea. David Davis, the former Brexit Secretary, leading the charge in the television studios this morning.
You take what he said this morning in the papers. He wants to cancel HS2 and spend it on a bridge to Northern Ireland. Well, I don't want to do that. I think one of the blights of British politics is politicians having fantastic ideas that cost a fortune and don't do much good, and that will be one of them. If you're going to use the money, use it for broadband or something else. On housing, he's right. The issue is there, but his answer's wrong. We need to completely rewrite the housing policy and so on. So, Boris is a great mate of mine. We have a very knockabout friendship, but quite a lot of his ideas, I think, are good headlines, not necessarily good policies.
That was David Davis there. Mr. Davis, Nigel, was also asked if there was a leadership challenge, a vote triggering a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister, how he would vote. And he said he would actually vote for Theresa May to remain in number 10. And therein lies the problem for the Conservatives. The fundamental problem for the Conservatives is that they may not like the Chequers plan, they may not like Theresa May, but they don't have an alternative. Theresa May was being interviewed by the BBC this morning and asked whether she would now ditch Chequers, whether she would abandon that project and go a different route, but she's staying the course.
In the Chequers plan, which actually delivers on the frictionless trade, which businesses such as those you've cited have raised as one of their issues. So it protects jobs, protects livelihoods here in the United Kingdom. It also delivers on the issue of the border.
You don't have to go for the worst option, do you?
No.
You don't have to go for WTO rules.
What we're doing at the moment, Andrew, is we're in the final straits of this negotiation. Now, I always said it was going to be tough, and it was always going to get toughest towards the end of the negotiation. But we're continuing to focus on getting a good deal for the UK. Now, that's about understanding where the EU has concerns with the proposals we've put before them. It's about understanding what their counter-proposals might be. But what drives me, what drives the government, is the national interest. That's why I'm saying to everybody in politics today, let's focus on the national interest. Okay. Let's focus on ensuring that we're all working to get the really good deal that this country deserves.
Those immortal 3 words from the 2017 election campaign spring to mind. Nothing has changed, and many Brexiteers within the party will just be banging their heads against tables, doors, walls at that statement from the Prime Minister. It is going to be a very long 4 days for Eurosceptics within the party, hoping that Theresa May might now try and find a different course of action to actually deliver what they think is the Brexit that they voted for 2 years ago, 2 and a bit years ago. Theresa May had the toughest time actually in that interview when she was quizzed about by Andrew Marr about the Windrush scandal and whether she would apologise for the so-called hostile environment that led to the scandal.
If you look at what has happened to the Windrush generation, actually there are people who found themselves in some difficulty without documents before we came into government. But let me just look at what the policy...
The families are watching. They want to know if you're actually going to apologise for the policy.
Well, I just want to explain the policy to you, Andrew. The point of the policy was to ensure that those people who were here in the United Kingdom illegally were identified and that appropriate action was taken. That's what went wrong in Windrush.
But this policy went, as we have just demonstrated, catastrophically wrong. I'm asking you again, you were Home Secretary during most of this period. It was in effect your policy, Theresa May's policy. The Council for the Welfare of Immigrants say that this lady died after a long period of terrible stress. As a result of Theresa May's Immigration Act, the buck stops with the Prime Minister. Will you apologise for the policy?
The purpose of the policy, it was to ensure, and we maintain a compliant environment policy, the purpose of the policy is to ensure that those people who are here illegally are identified and appropriate action is taken. I apologise for the fact that some people who should not have been caught up in that were caught up in that, with, in some cases, as we've just seen, tragic results.
Theresa May, they're refusing to apologise for the immigration policy, which was set, well, actually was set under Labour originally, but she oversaw as Home Secretary. Nigel.
Yeah, no, Theo, thank you. Enjoy the next few days. It's not going to be without drama, I'm sure. And I know one of the protests on the street today will be about her handling of Windrush. Theo, thank you for that. Well, interesting, isn't it? Yes, the Boris Bridge to Ireland. Boris has also in the past talked about a bridge to France. And David Davis being very critical there, saying, look, you know, the sort of basically it's a vanity project. Politicians love big projects that cost tens of billions. And I wonder whether people will start talking more about David Davis potentially as a compromise leader candidate. And Theo saying that from everything Mrs May has done thus far, being interviewed by Andrew Marr and elsewhere, she's indicating she won't change. But I'm asking, what if she did change? Would that be a sign of strength or of weakness? Sue is a new caller from Guildford. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning. How are you, Nigel?
I'm well, and I'm in Birmingham, which is a very strange experience during Tory party conference. It really is. But I wonder. Probably she won't change course, and
No, I don't suppose she will.
and
but
she'll
I think
probably
if she
take
will-
us. She'll probably take us to some huge crisis between now and Christmas, is my guess.
Right. Now, I think she should chuck Chequers, stop negotiating, and come out without a deal. I know that might sound drastic, but I truly believe that after a couple of days, once the EU has come round from the shock of us having the gall to stand up to them, they will come running back to do a deal, and we will have the upper hand, which is something we have never had during these negotiations.
So get them running after us, Sue. That's what
Yeah.
you're saying,
And
rather
that's
than
what
us
we
running
should have
after
done from
them.
the start.
Yeah, I tell you what, Sue, for me, the moment in all of this was December the 8th, when the Prime Minister left Downing Street at 4:15 in the morning to fly to meet the unelected Monsieur Barnier, because Barnier had given her a deadline. And that showed you, didn't it, who the bosses
Yes.
were?
What we should have done right from the start is when we issued Article 50 is also issued a list of what we wanted out of the our resignation and coming out of the EU, and they would have said, oh, no. And then we should have said, right, bye. And 2 years we've had now of and ahn, and we haven't got any further. And I think we should have done it right from the start, and by now
Wow.
we would have been out, and this country would have been on the road to glory.
Well, it's not going to happen with her as leader, Sue, but I thank you for your suggestion, and you're not alone in thinking that. A significant number, maybe 20+%, when people are given all the options in polls. Double the number who support the Chequers plan would support Sue's idea of just saying, do you know what? Enough is enough is enough. I do really seriously wonder why this Prime Minister is so stuck with that plan. I've got time for one more quick caller before the break. The next caller is David. David, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
You're from Coventry, just down the road.
I am, yes. Very quickly, there's three things I'd like to say. One, the people of this country did not vote in the 70s to be ruled and bossed around by Europe. We joined as a partner in Europe for trade. That's one.
Okay.
Two, the politicians had their vote the same as every citizen in this country, and the vote went for Brexit. Now they're trying to arrange another vote from within the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Sorry, but that isn't democracy. That's tyranny. And three, your idea of a Canada deal, to me, sounds great. But like the last lady, I would turn around and say, as I would say to the turkey, get stuffed. Because the thing is, they need us as much as we need them. There's things they get from us they can't get elsewhere. Europe is a morass, and it's just got to be sorted out. The situation is going to get worse.
But will she shift, David? But David, will she shift, or is she going to stick to this plan come hell or high water?
I'm afraid she's a rabbit in a car's headlights. She doesn't know which way to jump. I think personally we ought to get a Winston Churchill puffing his cigar in there saying, look, if you don't like it, forget it.
Oh, no. Let me assure you that the PC Brigade, they might not like Brexit, but they hate cigar smoking even more. David from Coventry, I thank you for your view. It is now time for the news. It's 11:30 with Lisa Aziz. If Mrs May chucks Chequers, if she does it in her Wednesday speech, people say she won't, but if she does, would that be a sign of weakness or strength? I think it would show that she'd woken up and smelt the coffee. She'd realised this plan isn't supported by anybody, isn't probably going to get through the House of Commons, and she'd build a lot of support in the country. But before we get back to that, the Ryder Cup is underway. It's the last day of it. It used to be, of course, the Americans against the United Kingdom and Ireland, but frankly, we weren't really good enough. Also, there was a bloke called Sevi Ballesteros out there who was really, really exciting for the crowds. So it became Europe, and it's now Europe against America. Not the European Union against America, because, you know, you can play if you're Norwegian, you can play if you're Swiss, and with Brexit, Britain will be able to play. It's a great sporting event. Europe are winning 10-6. Big lead. Tommy Fleetwood and the Open champion Francesco Molinari, who are now known as Mollywood, have won the first 4 games they played together. It's the singles today. I love the Ryder Cup. I like watching golf. I enjoy it. It's terrific. I'm very happy to support Team Europe. I just wish it hadn't been politicised with the European Union flag, and I'm sure I'm not alone when I see those shots with the European flag. Back to other European problems. Alan is a new caller from Kidderminster. Alan, if she changes course, would she be stronger?
No, I don't think so, Nigel. For the simple reason is she's deluding herself anyway.
Right.
You know, I thought she was quite an honest person. They all make out she's an honest person, but I don't think she is, because she won't answer the question, is she a Leaver or a Remainer?
Well, yes, I mean, you're right, because, I mean, Ian Dale on LBC asked her how would she vote if there was a referendum now. She just point-blank refused to answer it. Jeremy Paxman asked her 4 times, I think.
Exactly.
Did she now believe in Brexit? She wouldn't answer it. So I think we know where she stands, don't we?
Oh, totally. And there's one guy, is the only fella for me who could get us out of this video is Rees-Mogg.
Right.
And that's my honest opinion. I watched him on Question Time on Thursday.
Yes.
And the guy is so honest. You can tell he's an honest person. You know, he's not a rude person. When the people interrupt him, he'll back away and let them have their say, and then he comes back in. And he actually means what he says. I'm sure of it.
Alan, I do not doubt for a moment that Jacob sincerely believes in the things that he says, and is a very long way away from being the classic career politician that probably, Alan, people like you and I have criticised so much over the last few years. But do you think she will change course, Alan? Clearly you don't.
No, she won't. She won't. I mean, the thing is that, as I say, she's so deluded, and I think she's realised now she's dug a hole that deep that she can't get out of it.
So she'll go down with the ship, Alan, if necessary.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Thank you very much indeed. Rob says, no matter what the Tories come back with, Labour will vote against. Well, Rob, that's pretty clear, isn't it? We saw that from the conference. The Tories will vote against it. And it could be, that there is no deal that the House of Commons will unite around. That could be the case. We could be headed for an early election. We could be headed, who knows, for a suspension of Article 50, another referendum. Who knows what'll happen? What I feel very strongly is that Mrs May changing tack for a Canada or WTO style deal would get the support of the country behind her, which, even if the numbers were tough in Parliament, at some point the country would be the great card she'd have up her sleeve. Roger thinks Boris cannot be PM. He's too comedic. Theresa May is the only option available. Well, Roger, there are other options. And the fact that Boris is comedic doesn't necessarily rule him out. After all, this guy has been the Mayor of London. He's been the Foreign Secretary. Brandon thinks that May's finished if she carries on with this. It'll never get past a Commons vote. She's just clinging on to her job. Well, I have to say, I find it very difficult to believe she's sticking with a plan that only 10% of the country thinks is a good idea. Herbie is a regular caller from Harrow. Hi, Herbie.
Good morning there, Nigel.
Good morning.
Well, you can't blame Theresa May for everything. I think you've got to look at her advisors who are advising her on all this. Bearing in mind she's just awarded him a £30,000 bonus. What for, I do not know. I'd like to earn £30,000 for the mistakes he's making on her.
Is this Ollie Robbins you're referring to?
Yeah, I certainly am.
Well,
yes,
OK, Herbie. OK, Herbie, let me turn it back the other way on you, right? How's it Ollie Robbins is for? I mean, Mrs Thatcher once said, advisors advise, ministers decide. And isn't the problem here that Theresa May, either not knowing her own mind or basically being a Remainer, has chosen to listen to that side of the argument? I think the fault of Chequers lies far more with her than it does with the civil service.
Well, I blame all the parties, to be honest, because I don't think they've come together and discussed it and debated it realistically with the problems that they could face with such a deal as she's come up with. So you can blame both her advisors and the civil servants, which I think are keeping their own jobs. And now that we've got another army of 7,000 being employed to sort out Brexit, what a joke. You know, where's this money coming from? It's even more money, wasted money. 7,000.
Well, let's hope they make it.
Help us, Nigel.
Let's hope they make a good job of it, Herbie, but clearly you're not confident that they will. Thank you, Herbie. Dave is a new caller from Woking. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am well, although I'm watching on with incredulity as this woman sticks to this ridiculous Chequers proposal.
Well, a friend of mine said after we had the referendum vote, I said to him, well, we're leaving. And he said, they'll never let us leave. And I said, well, they've got to. You know, everyone knows what the position is. We then waited 9 months for them to trigger Article 50.
Yep.
And he said to me, they're planning their strategy there. And afterwards, all of a sudden, we've got a soft Brexit, a hard Brexit, and something in between. So they actually invented two lots of Brexit, really. And, well, this is what we're having now. And you've got to admit they're very clever, Nigel, aren't they?
Well, there's certainly a lot of very big money and a lot of very big brains on the other side of the argument to me who, in their own devious way, are trying to change the language around Brexit and will do their best to frustrate the result. But, Dave, the point is this. You know, however hard they try, and they've succeeded in the case of Denmark and Ireland to make people vote again and get the result they want. But in the end, Dave, if we are resolute on this, we will in the end win.
Well, I certainly hope so, because there's the old theory that, you know, the country is run by money people, for money people, and this kind of almost confirms that, doesn't it?
Well, if you go back, if you go back through history, Dave, you know, slavery was run by the moneyed people. Slavery was had the support of the establishment. In the end, it was overcome, wasn't it? It was overcome. You know, the Corn Laws, which meant that landowners did well and the poor starved. After a long campaign, that was overturned. If there is strong resolve in a campaign and it doesn't buckle and it doesn't weaken, in the end, we can win.
Well, I certainly hope so, Nigel, and I'm right behind you.
Right, well, we're going to keep battling away, and we are going to win. Thank you. I'm going to go to JT, who's a new caller from Japan. From, what's the name of your city, JT?
I'm in the area just outside of Tokyo.
Just outside Tokyo.
And it's a pleasure to talk with you, Nigel.
Pleasure to talk with you. So, viewing this from afar, what do you think? What do you think our Prime Minister ought to do?
Well, I think it's obvious that she needs to toss out the whole Chequers thing. The European Union with Brexit is playing a very interesting game of sort of like a strategic chess game to try and bully Britain into, say, a state of Brexhaustion. But while the European Union is playing clever chess, the United Kingdom seems to be playing checkers, and it's a very different game. And I think that she should chuck it. It doesn't make her weak, it would make her stronger, because it would, I think, reinforce people's opinion that the Prime Minister actually has a clue of what's going on. The European Union won't accept it, Labour won't accept it, and probably the Tories will not find a way to accept it. So chuck it out, show some strength, and get on with the next bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. It would show strength, not weakness. But hey, but the powers on the other side. I haven't done a lot of Japanese media, JT, but I do remember after Brexit, 2 or 3 Japanese newspapers, and I sort of spoke to them collectively, and they, of course, went with the globalist agenda. Oh, my goodness me, this is a complete disaster. You voted for Brexit. How are you going to survive? And I said to them, well, why don't you, Japan, as a little offshore island, join up with the bigger mainland of China and have your laws and rules and regulations set there? And when I said that, I think they understood what I meant.
Yes, indeed.
Because nobody would suggest, because Japan's a tiny, what are you, 120 million these days, something like that?
122, 123.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, compared to China, I mean, what's China, 1.4 billion, is it?
It's around there, yes.
I mean, you're a little offshore island. How on earth do you survive?
Yes, we make our own laws.
Oh, really?
We control our own borders.
Goodness me.
Yeah. Yes, and we trade with other nations.
Good Lord. I didn't think it was possible. JT, I thank you so much for your call. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:45. So Theresa May's Chequers plan is seen by Brussels to be cherry-picking. It's seen by Eurosceptics to be such a betrayal that it's led to the resignation of the Brexit Secretary and the Foreign Secretary. It only has 10% support out there in the country, and yet she's been sticking with it, and we're told she probably in her big speech to the Tory party conference here in Birmingham on Wednesday, is going to stick with the plan. I mean, it strikes me as being absolutely bonkers. Tina thinks the plan is what the EU have told her to stand by. She's an EU pawn. Well, I'm not sure it's quite as simple as that. Some suggesting here that Ian Duncan Smith should run for leader again. At least we have a Brexiteer. I suspect Ian, brilliant though he was in the Brexit campaign, I can't see him wanting to go back to being Tory leader again. He had a pretty miserable time. Ralph thinks if we go for a general election, the country will revolt. But how, Ralph? How will they revolt? I don't know. Why is she sticking with Chequers? Wouldn't she be stronger, more sensible, and command support in the country from Brexit voters from all parties by going for a different plan, a Canada or WTO plan? Len is a new caller from Ipswich. Good morning, Len.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Farage. I'm talking to my fellow Brexiteers in Ipswich here, and there's nobody has changed his mind. Nobody wants to go over to the Remain side. But my opinion is I'm off, as a Brexiteer, I would be all for a second referendum, provided, of course, that the Remainers would be prepared to wait 30 years like us. So let's have it in 2046.
Yeah, sounds about right, Len. I'm happy with that. Or maybe we could be a bit more generous and say 2036, perhaps. But
I'd just like to say that if you as a country are or a party want to hand the governance of the country over to a foreign power, which is what we did with Maastricht, it should automatically trigger a plebiscite, surely, because, I mean, we fought wars to maintain our independence, and the people should be asked, do you want to be governed by a foreign power? That's what we did, but we weren't given the chance at the time of Maastricht, 1987. We had to wait all this time.
And Len, you know, if you go right back to the 75 referendum, after we've been taken in without a referendum, it's pretty clear, you know, that what people were being told, and they're being told by the party leaders, Wilson, Thorpe, Thatcher, even Thatcher was on that side of the argument, this is just about trade, don't worry your little head. So the whole thing's been a lie to me, Len, right from the very start. Len, I thank you. Pat thinks on Facebook, the British people don't like being betrayed. This will be Theresa May's last conference before the party chucker. I think it may well be, Pat, her last party conference, although she has proved to be a remarkable survivor. I think there's not much doubt about that. Mark is another new caller from the Wirral. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. I'm a Conservative Party member.
Yes.
And I voted this week in the Conservative home poll that proved that 8 out of 10 who voted, this is party members who voted, said that we do not want Theresa May. We do not want Chequers, as another previous poll indicated. We do not want her or Chequers. And in my mind, Philip Hammond can go because he is the puppet master behind this.
But Mark, you're a Conservative Party member, okay?
Yes.
And there are, well, we don't quite know, but let's say there's 120,000 of you, yeah?
Yeah.
It's a reasonable number.
Yeah.
Don't blame Philip Hammond, because you know he's a Remainer. He's on the other side. Where are your MPs actually standing up and fighting to get rid of Chequers and or Mrs May? Where are they?
Okay, well, you've probably seen on Twitter a campaign called Stand Up for Brexit. Mm-hmm. And there are currently probably about 25, if not 30, Tory MPs who are involved with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sharing a platform with a couple this afternoon. I'm sharing a platform this afternoon with Peter Bone and with Andrea Jenkin and with Graham Stringer from Labour, I'm pleased to say as well. But there are some. But the vast majority, Mark, of Tory MPs are keeping their heads down, not committing either way and waiting to see what happens because they're careerists, Mark.
Well, I mean, Aaron Banks is quite right with his blue wave and the recent adverts that he's actually putting out, which Anna Soubry has had a hissy fit about.
That was just to remind listeners that Aaron Banks was suggesting that people join the Conservative Party and sort of take it over from the inside, basically.
Well, no, more than that. In the last day or two, he has actually started advertising in the Broxtowe constituency.
Yes.
giving Anna Soubry's record and stating that a majority in Broxtowe actually campaigned and won for Brexit, and that she is standing against it. So she is actually standing against her own constituents.
Okay. And Mark, are you confident that this party to which you pay your subscription is going to sort Brexit out properly?
No, I'm not. I mean, to be honest, I am so unhappy with the party at the moment. I would be happy to have a Labour government and Jeremy Corbyn, and I would be happy to have an opportunity of 2 years, and I would give it, in fact, no more than 1 year for Labour to make a total mess, but so that we in the Tory party can clean our clock, get them all out, and start again.
Well, Mark, I don't know. I think maybe the best thing could be if the Tory party splits, because clearly it's divided in a way that it never ever has been. Mark, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Russell says, so if no deal equals immediate Brexit and a deal equals a 21-month transition, then I vote for no deal. Russell, I haven't got a problem with no deal. No deal, no problem. But would the House of Commons, would our political establishment allow a no deal to happen? I have my doubts. They'd fight very, very hard against it. Very, very hard indeed. David is calling from Mill Hill. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Nigel. First of all, I would like to say, why is no one talking about the £10 billion a year we are going to save?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Between that and cutting down overseas aid would be awash with money. We could compensate any company that's having a problem in the short term with us leaving immediately. I think we should.
And David, if we left immediately, our goods would get charged by them $5 or $6 billion a year, and we'd be charging them $12 or $13 billion a year. So short term, money wouldn't be a problem. I agree.
I don't think even in the long term. And I don't believe that her best is our best. Because she's a Brexiteer. She wants to stay in. So how could she make a deal that's in her interest? Her interest will be to stay in, almost, because she never, ever voted to leave.
No, that's absolutely true.
And also, she's got some, not Muppet, I don't know what his name is, negotiating, and he's not even a person that's in favour of Brexit. How can you possibly appoint someone like that? It's gross incompetence.
So have the Tory party, have they either got the will, or is there time, given the negotiations, to get rid of her, David?
I really don't know, Nigel, but all I know is something's got to give. And maybe what will happen out of this is the EU will cave in and say, right, we need your £1 billion a year, so we will cave in and we will allow certain of cherry picking. I don't know, but they're gonna at some stage it's going to happen, isn't it? She's going to have to leave the meeting, and they'll come chasing after.
Yeah. I think there'll be a deal, is my view. Whether it's a deal that gets accepted in the House of Commons, whether it's a deal that's acceptable to leave voters remains to be seen. David, I thank you very much indeed for your call. I thank everybody this morning for their calls. Lots of passion. It's going to be a remarkable few days here in Birmingham. I'm just here for today. I'm going to be back tomorrow. I've got to go to Strasbourg to see that side of it. I'll be back on air at 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's Ian Payne. But up next with you, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, Sky News reporter Mark Austin has revealed the agonising moment he told his daughter, if you want to starve yourself to death, just get on with it. Do you know anyone struggling with an eating disorder? How far have we succeeded in destigmatising the conversation? Before that, everybody in Britain would work a 4-day week, but get paid for the full 5 days under radical proposals being explored by the Labour Party's economic team. Would you prefer a 4-day week? But first, Boris Johnson sets out his manifesto today for the Tories to win the next election, arguing that the government should stop trying to copy Jeremy Corbyn if it wants to defeat Labour. Who do you back for PM, Boris Johnson or Theresa May?
On your radio, on your